They told you the world was real, that what you see, hear, and touch is the final layer of truth, that if you can measure it, if you can name it, it must be all there is. But you've always known something was off, not in theory, in feeling. You felt it in crowded classrooms where you were taught to memorize instead of question. You felt it in fluorescent-lit offices where your soul shrank behind a name tag. You felt it in moments of silence, when the noise stopped long enough for something ancient inside you to whisper, "This isn't it. This isn't all." And that whisper never left, because you are not broken. You are simply awakening to the realization that the world around you has been encoded, programmed, designed, not by an evil machine overlord, but by layers of belief, by systems of control built over centuries, education, religion, media, politics, each one a thread in the web. The Matrix is not just a movie, it's not a metaphor. It's the structure of consensus reality, the version of life that has been manufactured for you since birth. It tells you what's possible, what's real, what's worth chasing, what's safe to feel. And the more you play by its rules, the deeper you fall asleep. Because the Matrix doesn't require your belief to function, it only needs your participation. And most people, they never realize they're in it. Because the illusion is too comfortable, too normal, too consistent. But for some, cracks begin to appear. Synchronicities, strange dreams, gut-level discomfort with the way things are. Moments that feel too precise to be coincidence and too inconvenient to ignore. These are not glitches, they are invitations. Not to escape, but to wake up. And if you're still here reading these words, then you've already felt them. This is not the beginning of your awakening. It's the continuation of something that started long ago. The Matrix doesn't trap you with chains. It traps you with stories. Stories about who you are. Stories about what's possible. Stories about what will happen if you dare to step outside the lines. And the most dangerous part? You didn't choose most of them. They were installed long before you were old enough to question them. You have to go to school. You have to get a job. You have to follow the rules. Don't question too much. Be realistic. Play it safe. And you did. Not because you were weak, but because you were trusting. And the Matrix feeds on trust that isn't examined. It gives you a path. It gives you identity. It gives you validation if you obey. But beneath that obedience, your soul starts to itch. Because you weren't built for repetition. You were designed for expansion. And that expansion doesn't come from comfort. It comes from cracking, from shaking, from watching your carefully built life fall apart and realizing it wasn't yours to begin with. That's why awakening often begins with collapse, not because you failed, but because the old operating system had to die. Maybe it was a breakup, a job loss, a crisis that shattered your sense of self. Whatever it wasn't a mistake. It was a break in the code. And through that break, light entered. You started seeing things you'd ignored, patterns in your family, contradictions in your culture, lies in your education, fear in your religion. And suddenly, the world didn't feel solid anymore. It felt scripted. But the scariest part isn't realizing the Matrix exists. It's realizing how much of you was built inside it. Your ambitions, your self-worth, even your relationships, designed to keep you spinning in circles, producing energy for a system that feeds off attention, conflict, and scarcity. And most people, they never leave, because the system rewards compliance and punishes curiosity. But you're still watching, still listening, still questioning. And that means you've already stepped out of the program, even if just for a moment. And that moment, that brief flash of clarity, that's where the escape begins. Waking up from the Matrix isn't glamorous. It's not neon lights and leather coats. It's grief. It's rage. It's shame. It's peeling back the layers of everything you thought was true and realizing how much of your life was lived on autopilot. Because once the veil lifts, you don't just see the illusion out there. You see how deeply it's rooted inside you, in how you talk to yourself, in the choices you make, in the things you chase that never really feed you. You realize you weren't living, you were performing success, performing confidence, performing identity for a system that taught you how to act, but never taught you how to be. And it hurts, because the truth doesn't set you free right away. First, it breaks everything you used to lean on. You start losing things, friends who still live inside the program, jobs that require you to suppress your intuition, beliefs that once gave you comfort but now feel like cages. It's lonely, it's raw, and it's real. But through that rawness, you begin to feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Yourself. Not the version they trained, not the one that fit in, the one underneath, the one that remembers. And as you walk through the fog of deprogramming, you begin to reclaim your inner technology. Discernment, presence, intuition, the ability to sit with uncertainty and not collapse into fear. That's how you exit the matrix, not through rebellion, but through awareness. Because the matrix can't hold what it can't manipulate, and awareness is unprogrammable. So you stop reacting, you stop chasing, you start observing. And observation, pure and clear, is the most dangerous form of power in a world built on distraction. If this is starting to feel familiar, it means you're waking up. Subscribe and turn on the bell. The remembering continues. Escaping the matrix isn't about disappearing. It's about remembering how to exist outside the code. At first, freedom feels like emptiness. The old markers of progress, money, titles, validation, stop making sense. You're no longer playing the game, but you haven't built your own yet. That space between what was and what will be is disorienting. You realize no one's coming to rescue you. There's no blueprint for truth, no syllabus for soul, no map for the reality you're here to create. Because now, you're not just unplugged, you're unanchored, and that's the moment the matrix tries to pull you back. It whispers, "It was easier when you didn't question." Maybe you're just being dramatic. Go back, fit in. It's safer there. But safe isn't freedom, and silence isn't peace. So you sit in the discomfort. You let the false identities burn. And in the ashes, you begin to notice something strange. You don't miss the old you. You miss the illusion of certainty. You miss the feeling of belonging, even if it cost you yourself. But this time, you're not willing to pay that price again. So you rebuild from presence, from breath, from truth. You stop outsourcing your worth. You stop waiting for permission. You stop bending to survive. And little by little, you remember how to move without performance, how to speak without pretending, how to love without attachment, how to live without the simulation running your nervous system. And here's what no one tells you. The real world isn't soft. It's not comfortable. It doesn't give you applause or algorithmic approval, but it gives you something more sacred: sovereignty, the ability to create not from fear, but from clarity, not from conditioning, but from choice. This is the realm beyond the matrix, not a utopia, but a clean canvas, and what you paint next is entirely up to you. When you leave the matrix, you don't just step into freedom, you step into responsibility. Because the game changes, reality stops being something that happens to you and starts becoming something you participate in. This isn't philosophy, it's physics. You are a vibrational transmitter, and the universe is not passive. It's a mirror, a subtle, silent field that doesn't listen to what you say, but to what you are. That's why things feel different now, why you can't tolerate certain people anymore, why certain environments drain you, why your body reacts to dishonesty even before your mind catches it. Your frequency is rising, your nervous system is tuning, you're stepping into coherence, and the field around you? It notices. You begin to see how reality responds to alignment, not with flashes of magic, but with precision. You think a thought, and the answer comes before you finish asking. You take a step, and doors open without you pushing. This isn't luck, it's resonance. But here's the catch. You can't fake frequency. You can say the affirmations. You can script the vision boards. But if your inner world is still vibrating from lack, fear, or desperation, the field will mirror that. Not to punish you, but to invite you deeper. Because the field isn't your genie, it's your teacher. It shows you what you're projecting. And what you're projecting is what you haven't integrated. That's the new game. Not creating reality from ego, but from integration. And integration is messy. It means facing the parts of yourself you exiled, the desires you buried, the truths you whispered at 3 a.m. and then silenced by sunrise. But here's the reward. Once those fragments return, your signal clears. And when the signal clears, creation becomes effortless. Not because you've hacked the system, but because you've become real. And the real world only responds to the real you. The final illusion is that there's something to escape from. You've spent your whole life trying to break free from the system, from your past, from the stories that shaped you. But what if the matrix was never outside? What if it was the fear you inherited, the silence you accepted, the truth you swallowed instead of spoke? What if the simulation was just a reflection of everything you agreed to in order to be loved, accepted, and safe? Then escaping the matrix isn't about leaving it, it's about dissolving it. from the inside out, not with rebellion, not with rage, with remembrance. Remembrance that you were never just a body, never just a citizen, never just a role. You were always the signal, always the architect, always the awareness pretending to forget itself, just long enough to remember who it really was. So where do you go from here? You stop looking for truth out there. You start listening for it in here. You stop following light. You become it. No more performance, no more chasing, just presence. Because the moment you stop trying to awaken and start living as if you're already awake, that's when the matrix lets go of you. Not because you defeated it, but because you no longer feed it. It can't touch the part of you that's not afraid. It can't program the part of you that no longer seeks permission. And once you step into that space, the world doesn't end. It begins. And it begins as you, the real you. The one they couldn't predict, the one they couldn't control, the one they never saw coming. Because you are not here to escape the matrix. You are here to override it with frequency, with presence, with truth. And that work doesn't happen on a screen. It happens in every breath, every choice, every silent moment where you choose alignment over approval. You don't need another red pill. You just need to remember that you are the glitch. And the glitch was never a mistake. It was the signal that you're ready.